Hey everyone, Kim White here, and welcome to your 2022 year ahead horoscope for Aquarius Sun and Rising. I'm really excited to talk about everything with you guys today. In this video, we're going to be going over every major transit of 2022, and more specifically, we're going to be going into how exactly it's going to be affecting you as an Aquarius Rising. Now, this is a two-part video series that I'm doing for the year ahead horoscopes. This is something new I've never done before. But I have another video out that I'll link in the description below. If not, it'll be floating around somewhere on YouTube, where I talk about every single major astrology transit of 2022. And I talk about the transit in and of itself, what it means, what it's going to signify, what it's going to look like. And in today's video, what we're going to be doing is more so going over what that transit's going to be looking like for you specifically, where it's going to be showing up in your life, and for you as an Aquarius rising, where it's going to be happening. If you want to keep up with every single month of 2022, I'm recording this during a Mercury retrograde, so you're going to hear me say a bunch of things wrong. But if you want to keep up with 2022 month by month, go ahead and check out my Patreon in the link below. I do monthly horoscopes there for each zodiac sign, as well as exclusive content, ad-free content, early release, and a bunch of other stuff too, so make sure you check that out. So I guess with that being said, let's go ahead and start. So we're kind of ending 2021 and starting 2022 with two really major transits. The first thing that we're going to talk about is Jupiter ingressing into Pisces. Now, this actually happened for like 5 minutes a little bit ago. Jupiter ingressed into Pisces just for a little bit in May and June of 2021. So as we talk about this, I want you to kind of think back to May and June of 2021. What was going on for you? You know, anything going on that was special. Jupiter rules abundance, hope, optimism, faith, gifts, opportunities. It's very altruistic, right? Jupiter is entering its home sign of Pisces, which pretty much just means Jupiter can do its thing without a lot of backlash. Like Pisces means it has all of the resources available to it that it needs, and all the tools that it needs to do the job that it needs to do, which Jupiter's job is to increase things, make things big, all that kind of stuff. But this is happening in your second house. Jupiter is ingressing in your second house, which rules. Okay, so the second house is a funny house. It rules really just money. Like at the end of the day, it's money. It's what you have. Now, of course, it can rule. I don't want to say it can rule other things. It does rule other things, and let's kind of go into that. Jupiter rules money, possessions, finances, resources, what you physically own, right? Jupiter going to your second house is going to look a few different ways. One, it could look like just making more money. Jupiter is increasing things, and your second house is like what you own, so you could just be buying more stuff, buying bigger stuff, spending more money on stuff, while you're also making more money. So I just want you to think back to May and June. Maybe you had a little bit of an increase in money. You started making a little bit more money, or you saw an opportunity to make more. That's what's pretty much going on right as Jupiter goes back into Pisces at the very, very end of 2021. So we start the year off with this transit. Congratulations. The other thing is Jupiter rules your 11th house of friendships, community, networks, groups of people. So while that's in your second house, this could somehow, your networks, your friends, your community that could be benefiting you and your money somehow. Now, the second big thing that we really need to go into is this Venus retrograde. So the big thing here is that Venus is going to be in shadow starting November of 2021. It'll be in shadow all of November, all of December, and then a few days before Christmas, Venus will actually station retrograde. So we pretty much go straight into 2022 with a really retrograde Venus. Now, Venus represents fun, romance, pleasure, enjoyment, games, right? And Venus in Capricorn is about rules, systems, regulations. Venus retrogrades usually symbolize a value shift or a value change, right? So this is happening in your 12th house of your subconscious, of the 12th house rules hidden enemies, the subconscious, repressed, unacknowledged parts of yourself, things that you don't always see or recognize, things that you repress. It also rules self-sabotage. So when you kind of astrologers will say self-undoing. I don't know what that means, but pretty much self-sabotage, I think, is what that translates to. So Venus retrograding in your 12th house. Venus is about, again, fun, pleasure, It's in Capricorn, so there's a certain system and there's a certain rules or a certain way of doing things. But as it retrogrades in your 12th house, I think the way that you used to do things or the way that you used to plan things just isn't going to work anymore. I want you to think about 2018, 2019, and 2020 when Saturn was going through your 12th house, where they're like, the 12th house also rules isolation and alienation. So you might just be spending more time alone here. Maybe you were spending more time alone throughout those years. But this is bringing up a lot of those topics again. Venus rules, number one, your 4th house of your home, your living situation, your family, like where you physically live, which this is important. Venus retrograding in your 12th house. You might just be more home alone during this time, staying at home. Maybe you're kind of sick of staying at home at this time, but maybe you're stuck at home. Venus is retrograding Capricorn. Your relationship to like isolation and loneliness is definitely going to change. Venus also rules your 9th house of far distance travel, foreign countries, higher education, spirituality, astrology. And as the planet that rules this area in chart retrograding in your 12th house, your ideas and I think your relationships to spiritual topics, to like higher mind topics, is going to change as well. And the 12th house typically is not the funnest house. So I think Venus retrograde, you may have like a lot of questions about things and a lot of anxieties about things. But I think just your relationship to the back of your mind, the things that you repress, that's just going to be coming up in a big way. I think a lot of it's also going to be showing up through the home so that's how we're starting 2022 off, right? Venus is in the middle of a retrograde. Jupiter goes back into Pisces. But then the big first transit that we have is Mercury stationing retrograde pretty much for some of you on your ascendant. But Mercury is going to be stationing retrograde exactly square Uranus. And this is kind of compelling in my opinion. Mercury, communication, right? Ideas, rationale, expression. Mercury is mostly about like communication, or it's the messenger. It communicates things. Mercury is retrograding in your 1st house, which typically means you miscommunicate something, or you say something wrong, or you misunderstand something, or you're relearning something. That's what Mercury retrogrades represent, relearning something, going back over things, delays. So Mercury being in your 1st house, you might think about something of yourself or think of yourself in some way, but then Mercury stations retrograde and you were wrong. Or maybe you didn't have the full answers then. But Mercury is going to station retrograde square Uranus. Uranus is in your 4th house of your home, your family life, your living situation. Mercury rules your 8th house of like taxes, investments, mortgages, inheritances, death. Mercury also rules your 5th house of love, romance, sex, pleasure, kids, children. And I think Mercury retrograding on your ascendant is very like a shocking discovery of yourself or understanding yourself in a new way. This might cause a lot of disruption in the home and the family place, or maybe this also could just be like something goes haywire at your house. Like, maybe you get shocked or something like that. Don't be worried. But anyway, this Mercury retrograde is going to be pretty intense for you guys. You guys get kind of like the worst of it. But anyway, that's how we're starting 2022. And mainly it's just like Mercury retrograde. Venus is still retrograde. Jupiter's fresh into Pisces. January is a weird month. It's kind of it's not the best fresh start to a year, which that leads us to, this is my 11th year ahead horoscope. I had to drink coffee for this, which I will be sipping throughout this video. Anyway, that leads us to February. And February is a completely different month. So the thing is with February, so let's get to February 4th. So February 4th, 3 really big things that are going on there. The first thing is Mercury is now direct. Mercury enters shadow by conjoining Venus and Pluto in your 12th house. So this whole Mercury retrograde is a really big like fear of something happening. And then like I think the Mercury retrograde in your ascendant might be like oh shit, things kind of end up happening. But then Mercury will station direct in your 12th house in Pluto, where it's like in your mind, you work things out. And I know that sounds weird to say, but just bear with me here. The 12th house rules the subconscious, the back of your mind, right? And I think Mercury going back over Pluto and stationing direct is like, you're going to work, like, I think there's going to be a lot of sudden change in your whole subconscious and everything. You're just going to be really kind of dissecting things in a weird way. And I think by this point, you've really kind of worked things out. And the thing is, Venus is now direct, though. 4th house, things of home, living situation, family life stuff. 9th house, spirituality, belief. that stuff's all going direct now in your 12th house, where I think this might even, well, so for example, the 12th house rules like your alone time, right? So maybe if you have a house full of family and kids and you have your own little space just for you, this is like reorganizing that space for you, for example. But Venus stations direct, where since November, in November, Venus entered shadow, was retrograde, shadow all of December, retrograde in December, then retrograded in January. Now we're back to where we were in November, and now you get to move forward again. But this time, Mars is here. Mars is all about energy, drive, action, fights, conflicts, but just doing things. Mars is exalted in Capricorn, which pretty much just means Mars does really, really well in Capricorn. If Mars is like energy, drive, competition in Capricorn, the sign of plans, like it's kind of like if you gotta, it can make things very efficient when you have a plan, right, to work with. Mars rules your third house of, okay, well, we're going to talk more about the third house as time goes on, but I always complain about talking about the third house because it rules a lot of things. But the third house for this definition, what I wanted you to focus on is if the ninth house is like higher education, your experience in what you're doing, the third house is really like how you use that knowledge, how you use your time, how you use your resources. The people, it also was the relationships and the people around you, like your neighbors, family members, like people like legitimately physically around you. But anyway, the third house is kind of like your schedule, essentially the time that you have. And Mars is going to be in Capricorn in your 12th. It also rules your 10th house of your career. I think you're just going to be working. You're going to be hustling, putting in energy, putting in work, putting in the grind. It's in your 12th house. It's going to be in silence. You're going to be kind of doing things by yourself. I think you're going to be kind of going away, kind of going within a little bit. Sun conjoining Saturn. Here's the thing, guys. Saturn's in your first house. You are redefining, for a lot of you, Saturn going through your first house is you're really redefining a lot of who you are. You're really coming into yourself. A lot of you have been feeling this for a long time, and you're finally going to come into it this year, versus a lot of you actually let yourself come into yourself over this past year and a half. And that's going to continue. And I just think a lot of this Mars-Venus stuff is more of that. As we go through February, though, the big thing of February is Mars and Venus are going to be conjoining each other pretty much by the exact same degree for a whole month. Now, Mars and Venus conjoin each other all the time, not super crazy. But what is crazy is that they're going to be at the exact same degree for like a month. So Mars and Venus, that's like really playing, like it's like playing a new game, and it's like if you've never played a video game before and you play it and you're like addicted to it immediately, like that's Mars Venus, right? Like having a lot of fun, getting really energized with something. It's in your 12th house, so doing things by yourself, doing things alone. This is very private. I think, again, this is in the back of your head. I think you're going to be really just re-examining your subconscious and certain fears and anxieties that you might have. And as we go through February, it's mostly just Mars and Venus going through your 12th house. It's still subconscious stuff, really, which leads us to March 2nd, really. March 2nd is pretty much it's a pretty big day for you guys because three things happen. One, Venus now leaves shadow. So I want you to think. Venus enters shadow November of 2021. Again, December, January, it's retrograde. February, it's still in shadow. It's not until March, which is 5 months deep into Venus in the sign of Capricorn, until Venus leaves shadow, right? So like whatever was started in November of 2021, you don't even wrap up until March of 2022. And it wraps up with a bang because Venus is also still on top of Mars, right? But they're now on top of Pluto, where this is a really dramatic, I think, change. I don't know what this is going to look like because the 12th house is a weird area, right? The 12th house rules hidden enemies, the subconscious, isolation, alienation. It rules traveling too, but I don't know how that looks in this case. Venus rules over your 4th house of your home and living situation. So I think there's a lot of, I think there's a problem with maybe your house and then like it gets resolved at this point, or maybe you're hoping for a resolution, but this is like, maybe there isn't resolution, but this is when you know what you got to do at this point. Just a lot of things really you're coming to terms with a lot of things. The other thing is Mercury is going to be conjoining Saturn in your 1st house. Again, Mercury is like the messenger and the communicator, and it's on top of your ascendant ruler while Saturn's transiting your ascendant. Like a lot of you are going to become like really clear on who you are. And I think just a lot of things about yourself are really hitting. This is also the new moon in your 2nd house. I think this also involves a Pay increase. I think this involves some type of money or new financial asset that might, change your opinion about yourself or what you're kind of doing. So that's how we start March off, but then we continue March. And what I want to show you is on March 6th, Mars and Venus, dang it, Mars and Venus are going to enter Aquarius. So let's look at this. In March, you're going to have Mercury, Saturn, Mars, and Venus all in your first house. This, in my opinion, like January is very like a downhill month. February is like a good rock bottom. March is very, very new. This is new year, new you mentality right here. Mars and Venus, I think you're going to be kind of enjoying parts of yourself, learning about parts of yourself, expressing different parts of yourself. It's just a really weird time. Mostly dealing with your identity, mostly dealing with even like body stuff. This is good. Like the first house rules health too. So like maybe you're getting more active. You're trying to focus on your health stuff. And that's mostly what March is all of this Mars, Venus, Saturn stuff, like having to do new things with your identity, with yourself, with your body, with your image, with your public reputation. The biggest other thing in March is both Venus and Mars. Notice that they're still on top of each other. They're a little bit separated now, but still the same. Venus and Mars are both going to square Uranus. So the problem is you're going to be doing all these new things and it's going to, it's fresh ground. The concrete's still a little wet. Mars and Venus squaring Uranus and Taurus is like, it's like when you're first learning how to perform, you're going to have some accidents, right? And you kind of just have to keep the show going, right? That's going to be what really this is. Like Mars and Venus doing the new things that you're doing and incorporating in your life are going to shake things up with the living situation, with the family, with your home life. The other thing is there's this Mercury-Jupiter conjunction in your second house. This looks kind of interesting because, this looks good for money. I don't know how though. Because like it's like your 8th house ruler conjuncting Jupiter. Maybe you make more money and you could pay off some debt. Or maybe you can buy more fun things. But this looks really good for money and stuff. Like, again, I think this is good, but this is just weird for you guys. It's very, very new. That's pretty much March. It's mostly this Mars-Venus thing going through your first house. I think you're going to get over a lot of fears in like December and January. And then February, it's really about kind of like moving forward with some stuff. And March is really like getting your sea legs back, essentially. Which brings us to April. April is probably the biggest month of the year, in my opinion. Super, super big month. Very exciting. The big thing here is we'll have a Mercury Kazim in your third house. That's not really a big deal. The big things that are a big deal is April 5th when Venus enters Pisces and the Mars-Saturn conjunction. So let's talk about the Mars-Saturn conjunction first because that's going to be a big deal. Because, again, Mars is going to be going through your first house where I think – while Mars is in Aquarius, you might be a little bit more frustrated or irritated than normal. But Mars has conjoined Saturn in Aquarius before. The last time it happened was March 12th of 2020. That was when lockdown started. What was going on for you then? Were you locked down at home? That's one thing. But Mars and Saturn conjoining your first house would literally be like having to work within a certain limitation, having to work within the limit being you're outside of something, you're outside of your normal area. This is really, taking yourself seriously, a lot of discipline, a lot of like working within a certain rules or a certain structure. But Venus is now in Pisces though. And this is, let's also talk about Jupiter and Neptune in your second house. Jupiter's been flying through your second house. You're making more money. You're buying more things. Jupiter's conjoining Neptune where this will be kind of interesting because, I think you guys are just going to be making some significant purchases. But Neptune rules romanticism. Neptune rules idealism. So does Jupiter. But Neptune also rules illusion, fantasy. It also rules the media. So Jupiter and Neptune conjoining each other in your second house could be like making purchases on like media type purchases. Venus is going into your second house. So I think you're just going to be making more money at this time too. And I think, and this is the thing, during this time, I think the whole world's going to open up. Everyone's going to be pretty much for the most part kind of over COVID. And I just think the vibe is just better in April. It's Venus, Jupiter conjoining Neptune with Venus. It's pretty wet. It's pretty fun. It's pretty wild. Then Mars goes into your second house. And again, I think you're making more money, but you're spending it at the same time. More money, more problems. And what I want to bring up here is this. April 30th. It's been a blast so far. It's been a great month. But there's this eclipse in Taurus. Now, I haven't even mentioned this yet, and I'm going to have a video about this too that I might link in the description if I remember. But if not, it's going to be floating around somewhere on YouTube. The eclipses are now in Taurus and in Scorpio. So the biggest thing here is the North Node is now in Taurus, which the North Node is like what compels us, what we're driven towards, what we're hungry for. And it's in Taurus, right? Security, foundation, stability. But it's transiting your fourth house of your home, family, living situation. So there's this urge to be like, hey, I want to be more centered with my living situation. I want to feel more grounded here. But the South Node is going to be going through your 10th house. The South Node is a drain. The South Node is exhausting. The South Node is like a purging, and it's like getting rid of. A lot of the South and the North Node stuff is very fatalistic. And for a lot of you, the South Node is going to be going over your midheaven, over your 10th house. And there's going to be kind of this like career change. The South Node is like things that you got to get rid of, things that you got to purge, things that are sticky and gunky and that you got to get rid of. And the North Node is going to be, and I think the reason why is because the North Node is going to have this dramatic call to attention to your fourth house of your home and your family life. On April 30th, there's this total solar eclipse in your fourth house where it's like, hey man, all of a sudden random thing goes on with the home. All of a sudden random thing goes on with the family. It doesn't look bad. And this is why. This is ruled by Venus, right? It's an eclipse in Taurus. Venus is on top of Jupiter. Okay, Jupiter's in Pisces. It's in its home sign. It's in your second house. Great for money and friend stuff, right? But Venus, so each planet is exalted at a certain degree of the zodiac. And Venus's exalted degree is 28 degrees Pisces. So let's stack up the list here. Venus is at 28 degrees Pisces. She is on top of the ruler of Pisces, Jupiter, at 28 degrees Pisces. They're conjoining each other, while also on top of Neptune. Plus, there is an eclipse on that day, and it's ruled by Venus. That is such a fat stack of crazy things, like good. This is the best day of the year. Best day of the year, I'm telling you right here. Venus conjoining Jupiter in your second house. This is going to be I think this is going to be a big shakeup with money and finances and resources regarding your money and regarding your home and your family. I don't know how that's going to look. I don't know where that's going to come from, but I would assume this is going to be an increase in wealth with a big sudden change in the living situation stuff. Looks pretty good. Can't lie. Venus, maybe like you make money with your home. Maybe you buy a new home. I don't know what it's going to be. But then we get to May. And in May's a very exciting month as well because we're riding the high of that, right? And the big thing with May really is, let's kind of do this. There we go. The big thing with May is, number one, we're going to have a Mercury retrograde in Gemini, which really won't be important until later on in like June, I think. But Jupiter is going to enter Aries. So this is where it gets a little complicated. But again, Jupiter rules your second house of your money, your finances, and your resources. Excuse me. Jupiter rules faith, spirituality, religion, belief, optimism, spirituality. And as Jupiter ruling all that stuff is in the sign of Aries, what do you think Aries is about, right? Aries is ruled by Mars, so it's very confrontational, action-oriented, blunt. Jupiter in Aries is very like increasing the amount of things you do, like literally just doing more things. Jupiter in Aries is definitely like taking, like if you believe it, do it. If you do it, believe it. That's really what I've been kind of trying to say. And Jupiter's going to enter your third house of, well, again, the third house rules a lot of different things. The third house rules traveling, short distance traveling, like local community stuff. It rules the people that are closest to you, like your local community. It's going to rule your siblings. It's going to rule extended family members, not like your parents are the fourth house, aunts and uncles are third house, right? The third house also rules like how you use your resources. Like if the first house is who you are and the second house is what you have, the third house is how you use it. So Jupiter also rules your second house of resources, and that planet's going in your third house of like utility. I think this is going to be like you have the money and now you're really putting it to use. You're really putting it to work. You're seeing the opportunity. Jupiter rules also your 11th house of friends and like networks, and that's in your third house of your community. So I think this is really like gaining a lot of friends in your local area, expanding in this area, doing more in this area. Which then, Jupiter enters Aries, which is crazy, game changer. But then at the very end of May, Mars is going to enter Aries and conjoin Jupiter. I mean, like, yo, that's some fat action right there. Like, well, Mars rules your 10th house of your career and your legacy, your public reputation, and it's conjoining Jupiter in your third. Like, you got some big plans, and I think you're really taking a lot of action on them here. As Mars enters this, the problem though is Mars is a bad planet, so Mars conjoining Jupiter could very kind of be like a little fire turns into an explosion. So kind of be careful with how big things can kind of go here. But this is taking like increased action. This is also investing a lot of money too. Mars is conjoining your second house ruler, so definitely spending that money that you've been making. But Venus is going into your fourth house. I think this is good for the family living situation stuff. The only thing I don't like, and this is how we get into June, is as we get into June, this whole time Mercury is pretty much stationing direct square Saturn. So there's something about this fourth house home living situation stuff that gets delayed. It's funny. So look at this. At the beginning of June, Mercury stations retrograde or stations direct, exactly square Saturn. And then like the next day, Saturn stations retrograde. So there's this weird handoff of like home and living situation delays. Like things are good, but there's some type of weird boundary or weird gap with things. Like Saturn's in your first house. Saturn stationing retrograde in your first house is like you've been taking on all this new responsibility. You've been identifying yourself in new ways. Now that responsibility, that authority, that it's starting to hit, that it's starting to weigh on you a little bit, right? And I think this Mercury retrograde will really initiate that by the time we start June. I mean, you're taking all this new action. Mercury is now direct. Venus, everything's good, but I think it's like, oh man, it's all on you now, and that could be a little nerve-wracking at the worst, but you'll be fine. That's really June. It's Saturn stations retrograde, and the biggest thing here is Venus will conjoin Uranus in the North Node, and then square Saturn too. So there's like all this intense stuff going on in your home, like whether you're buying more things for your home or you're trying to make your living situation more comfortable, but it's all over the place because it's Venus conjoining Uranus. It's very unexpected. It's also North Node. It's like one of those things that you have to do, but it's very like random. And then Venus will square Saturn, where there's this comfort in your home and your living situation, but also with this weird boundary involved, with this weird new responsibility involved that is interesting to say the least. Anyway, we get to June 18th. Yeah, pretty much that's all really June is Venus on top of the North Node, Uranus, a bunch of shakeups and a bunch of things going on there. The thing is, though, what's interesting about this is also setting up the context for July and August. So let's actually fast forward a little bit. Yeah, Venus and the Mercury will enter your fifth house, which seems way more fun too, by the way. Like that's definitely good. But what I want to get to is this. July 1st, or not July 1st, I think it's July 5th. July 5th, Mars enters Taurus. So when we start July, there's only really two big transits going on in July, and the first one is Mars entering Taurus. This looks really gnarly because this is going to be bad in August, and we're going to explain that. But Mars, let's think about since the beginning of 2022, Mars has been dignified in Capricorn, and then it was conjoined Saturn. Then it went to Pisces, where it also had dignity because it has triplicity, but it conjoined Neptune and conjoined Jupiter. Well, then it went to Aries, or it went into Aries and conjoined Jupiter, and now it's in detriment. This is the first time we have a debilitated Mars. So Mars is going to go into detriment, right? Energy, action, drive, conflict. That gets to be a little problematic and frustrating. The last time Mars went into Taurus was between January and February of 2021. So think back to that time and what was kind of going on regarding neighbors, because Mars rules your third house of neighbors, but it's in your fourth house of living situation, home and family. So you could be seeing problems there. Mars rules your 10th house of your career. And like I said, the South Node is in your 10th house. So there's kind of like this purging that's going on with career related stuff. And now that that planet's in your fourth house in detriment, I think that might I think if you're moving or once you're more comfortable with your living situation, then you get to really start to address some issues. That's also just July. Like July is just Mars going into Taurus. The only other thing July has to offer is Jupiter stationing retrograde at the very end of the month, though. It's the very, very end. Let me show you. So the very end, Jupiter stations retrograde. Here's the thing. Jupiter went through your whole first house, then it flew through Pisces, and then it had a Venus conjunction, Neptune conjunction, Mars conjunction, so many transits to Jupiter. As Jupiter stations retrograde, this is kind of like when things really start slowing down and you're going to be much more introspective. And it's like, sure, you just did a lot of action, but now you're really going to be kind of like, okay, is this action sustainable? Do I really believe that I can keep doing all of this stuff, right? It's just a much more introspective time, and it's not going to be so outgoing and fun and sporadic. Which is funny because a few days later, on August 1st, we have the Mars-Uranus North Node conjunction. Now, I've been trying to tell people this is pretty much the worst. There's 2 bad days in 2022. This is one of them. This looks like, in my opinion, I mean, like something wrong with your neighbors or something. There's going to be some type of accident at your home or something like that. Mars is on top of Uranus, so that's very destabilizing, crazy energy. It's on top of the North Node. It's like an emergency. It's in your 4th house. This rules your 3rd house of neighbors. This could literally just be like a pipe breaks at your home or an electrical thing happens at your home. This is definitely home and living situation related, just number one. It could be career stuff. It could definitely get in the way of a lot of work stuff, but it looks like the problem itself is coming from the home. Which then on August 7th, like a week later, Mars will conjoin Uranus in the North Node, but then it's going to square Saturn. So the hard part is Mars square Saturn is going nowhere fast. And while there's like all of these issues in your 4th house, it's squaring like Saturn in Aquarius in your 1st house is like this responsibility, this duty that you're taking on is going to force you to like handle this issue. And so I'm just here to tell you, it ain't looking fun that first week in August for anybody. But I think for you guys specifically, you're just going to have to really be the adult in the situation in a lot of ways. And that's just going to be really, really hard, really challenging to say the very least. But that's the only thing in August. August is just that shitty transit. And then that's pretty much it for the whole month. Mars will enter Gemini. But the thing is, that will be important in September. And we'll talk about that here in a second. Let's go ahead and just jump into September. The thing is, we start September off with Mars literally entering shadow. So Mars is going to go retrograde in Gemini later on this year. And we'll talk about that as time goes on. But what's important about September is if you want to know what's going to be going on during this Mars retrograde, it's important to start paying attention to the context clues that start to set themselves up starting at the beginning of September. Mars is about action, drive, energy, conflict, right? It's in Gemini. So using your words as weapons, fighting with like ideas. But Mars in Gemini is very like, I need to do things. I need to be stimulated. And it's in your 5th house. Love, romance, pleasure, sex. It's going into your 5th house. I think this is much more time of like wanting to have more fun, wanting to be more self-expressive, wanting to play more. But Mars in Gemini is like doing 2 different things, doing different recreational activities, but we'll keep talking about that as time goes on. What's important, though, is that you just start paying attention to what hobbies or activities you get into at this point because you're going to come back to this stuff. The only other thing in September is we have this like Mercury retrograde opposite Jupiter, which I really like this because I just feel like Jupiter just moves so fast, and this Mercury retrograde really allows us time to really let that sink in. Mercury's retrograding in your 9th house, you know, changing your ideas about your spirituality, your religion, your astrology, your higher education. It's opposite Jupiter. Like, how are you integrating what you know into your practice? And that's really September. It's like Mars in shadow, building up context for things. Mars is going to retrograde. Mars rules your 3rd house of what you do every day and how you utilize what you know. And it also rules your 10th house of your career. So maybe you're wanting to have more fun and be more creative, but this Mercury retrograde is a time of questioning what that means. That was a really quick synopsis of that Mercury retrograde. But pretty much that's the only thing that's going on in September is just like that. But then we get to October, and October is like 10 years. April is the best month. October could be good, but it's like 10 years in like a whole month. We start the month off with the Saturn-Uranus square. So for you guys, this is not anything new. You know about this. Saturn's been squaring Uranus since January of 2021, the middle of 2021, the very end of 2021. And then we really don't get an exact hit until October of 2022. This is, I'm pretty sure, the last and final one. But Saturn in your 1st house, having to be more responsible, understanding yourself and who you are more, squaring Uranus. You've had to do random, unexpected things with home, living situation, family stuff. And you just get more of that during this time. It's, again, nothing new, but it is destabilizing. It is going to throw a wrench in your plans like it has been. So that's how we start October off, which is going to be a pretty sudden thing. Like, that will be pretty intense, to say the least. Just because, I mean, again, Saturn's over your ascendant. Like, you're just really understanding yourself in new ways. But then the other thing that we've got going on in October is this Mars-Neptune square. So I think this Mars retrograde, because here's the thing, in September, I failed to mention this. Excuse me. I failed to mention this earlier. But Mars is going to be trining Saturn like this whole time. So here's the thing. It's constructive. That doesn't always mean it's easy. It's good, but it doesn't always mean it's enjoyable. Mars trining Saturn, right? Mars is in Gemini in your 5th house. Being creative, putting your unique gifts, talents, and abilities into the world. That's a big part of it. It's trining Saturn. This is helping kind of crystallize a little bit more of your identity and help you figure out a little bit more of who you are. But here's the thing. Mars in Gemini squaring Neptune and Pisces. Neptune and Pisces in your 2nd house. Neptune in your 2nd house is like definitely, Neptune rules romanticism. Neptune rules ideology. Neptune rules again, illusion, fantasy, mysticism. And Mars is, and it's in your 2nd house of money, and Mars is in your 5th house of like sex, love, romance, pleasure, kids, art, music, creativity, and it's scoring it. So I think there's going to be some like money issue, not necessarily money issue, but like, I feel like you're just not going to know where to really put your time and resources into things that you want to do. It's going to be kind of weird. The whole time, Venus is going to be trining Saturn. Venus is going to be trining Mars. There's all this air stuff where I think you're really getting clear about a lot of things with like who you are, what you believe, what you like to do. But Mars squaring Neptune is, I think there's going to be like some money or resource thing that's kind of confusing and you're not sure how it's going to look. So that's going to really, and Mars is really slowing down at this point. So Mars will be squaring Neptune for a while, but we get this Venus, Sun, Mars, Saturn trine. So everything's like really working out in a really positive way, right? Or at least you're feeling good too about yourself. But everything changes around the end of October because we have 2 kind of interesting transits. One of them is Venus is going to have its Cazimi right here at 29 Libra in your 9th house. So this is really like, setting a new start in your spirituality. Maybe you're traveling more at this time, your personal beliefs, your worldview. Maybe you're starting school or college at this time. That's because the 9th house rules higher education. It also rules your 4th house of your home and living situation. So a lot of things are getting cleared out here and really starting new. And it's all good. And then until the next day on October 23rd, because then the Sun and Venus both go into Scorpio and that Cazimi still continues. And this is when, let's kind of fast forward to here. On October 25th, we have the start of the solar eclipses in Scorpio. So we'll have this total solar eclipse in Scorpio. Just like there was all this intense draw towards family and living situation stuff and stability, that purging, that cleansing, that shit you've had to get rid of. This is the time. This is when you got to move on from certain things, and you're gonna be kind of really changing some career stuff up here at this point. So pretty much that all kind of starts to set in, and then on Halloween, Mars stations retrograde, and this is the thing. All of this stuff is in Scorpio in your 10th house of career. Mars is retrograding. Mars rules your career and it's retrograding in your 5th. There's something that it's like you don't want to do it. You don't like doing it anymore. It's not stimulating. It's not fun. I think there's just parts of yourself that you're really starting to understand during this time and that you're like, all right, I need to change this. I got to stop doing this. It's not fun for me anymore. It's not exciting. And I think also too, Jupiter's back in your 2nd house. It's retrograding. Like maybe the money was nice. Maybe the money's good, but it's just not your thing. And you're really reflecting on what it means to make money, what it means to have money. Jupiter conjoining Neptune, like dissolving your ideals around money and dissolving like what you perceived money to be for you. It's a really big deal. Mars is squaring Neptune too. Like maybe doing something for the money isn't what's fun. But that leads us to November, of course. In November, we have this. Check this out. What is this? Mercury Cazimi. Let's go here. Mercury Cazimi right? So it's a communication that's being had. Something is being very clearly understood. It's in Scorpio, so it's very raw and real. It's on the South Node. You've seen it coming. It's in your 10th house. It's in your career. So a message you saw it coming, raw and blunt in the career and the workspace. It is opposite Uranus. It's kind of last minute. It's kind of destabilizing. It's kind of sudden and shocking. And it's a total lunar eclipse. It's just one of those things that it just dramatically brings your attention. And it's squaring Saturn in your first house. I feel like there's going to be some shocking changes that you make with career and work stuff that you just kind of have to do. You know, you have to, it's like ripping a Band-Aid off. You don't want to do it. It's going to hurt, but you just know you have to. And I think that's what November 8th is really ripping that Band-Aid off. Really changing and cleansing and just purging all of that shit with career stuff. For a lot of people too, I don't want people to think that like they'll lose their job or anything like that. Some of you might like lose your job, but honestly, most people will probably just move on from a career and just change identity and change labels in a lot of ways. That's pretty much November. Like November's like this really intense eclipse, and it's like, ugh. But then what's nice though, and what I love about this is Mercury and Venus are in your 10th house, and then they start to trine Jupiter. And like, look at this day. There's like, look how wet everything is. Jupiter retrograde in Pisces with Venus and Mercury and Scorpio trining it and the moon there. It's very emotional. It's very, and I think that's needed. I think a lot of things need to be felt with your work, your money, and your career things. And I think things really work out after making that sudden, shocking change. That's really November. And then Mercury and Venus will enter your 11th house of friends. So you're going to be more focused on your friends. But Mars is still retrograde, and this is what I wanted to bring to attention. So pretty much the last part of November, the only thing we've got going on is Mercury and Venus are going to be conjoining each other. They'll go opposite Mars and Gemini. The thing is, you're going to be changing what you do for recreation and fun. And I think the solution to that is making more friends. As Mercury and Venus and the Sun are in your 11th house, it's about finding the community that's going to bring that to you. Jupiter is also direct at this point. So as we get into December, Jupiter is direct in your second house of money. So I think the money stuff worked itself out. The money stuff's fine. It's just really about doing the things that you want and not doing the things that you have to. And that's really December. The only other thing we have December, Mercury and Venus will be pretty much on top of each other for a while. They go into your 12th house. And then at the very, very end of December, the very, 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 very end, Jupiter will go back into Aries. So you're back to like kicking ass and taking names, utilizing all of that time and resources that you're going to be having. But then Mercury is going to station retrograde literally like the last day of December in your 12th house. So re-examining subconscious things again. But that is like the end of 2022. That's so far from now. If you like this video, please let me know you like it by giving it a like. That would really help me out, and that would let me know that you like this video. Let me know what month you're looking forward to. Let me know what month you're not looking forward to. I'd love to know what your guys' opinions are about all of this stuff in the comments below. Again, if you want to keep up with monthly horoscopes and know what's going to be going on every single month, make sure to check out my Patreon at the link below. Thank you guys so much for being here, liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you, and I'll be seeing you next year.